Doctor, we are ready to start.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Wonderful. Distinguished speakers and guests, ladies and gentlemen, good morning to those who are in Portugal and good afternoon to all the others. Welcome everybody at our session. It was snowing here in Estonia today in the morning, but I'm sure in Portugal you are having a lot better weather. So we are feeling bad that we can't join you there in Portugal, but one day we will come again. I consider it a great privilege to have been invited to the conference, and wholeheartedly I would like to thank the Portuguese Presidency for their great work during these challenging times and for organizing the current conference. I would like to welcome you all to our first breakout session, which theme, of course, is very, very important. It will be about the shortages of medicines, but not only. I'm sure there is nobody in the audience who haven't experienced the difficulties of shortages of medicines. But today in our session, we try to concentrate to the solutions already. So I hope that after our session, the solutions will be on the table. So some introductory notes. I will be moderating the session in the beginning. At the end, my name is Kristin Raudsepp. I'm the Director General of the Estonian State Agency of Medicines. My special interest for years in the agency and in the EU regulatory network has been the issue of availability of medicines. And I'm also the co-chair of the HMA-EMA task force of availability of medicines together with Mr. Noel Vatillon from EMA. About the technicalities, please mute your microphones if you are not talking. And you were all present and you have heard very inspiring lectures and ideas in the morning. And now you all have the possibility to go and have a say in a breakout session. There will be 4 breakout sessions, all chaired by very experienced colleagues from drug regulatory agencies, association from hospital pharmacists and consumer organizations. So the session number 1 will talk about national experience on shortages management. And the rapporteur will be Hugh Malone, the Director General of the Federal Agency for Medicines and Health Products of Belgium. Session 2 will be about shortages management plans to avoid availability problems. And the rapporteur will be Ms. Josipa Cvek, the Senior Advisor at the Croatian Agency for Medicinal Products and Medical Devices. Session number 3 will be about the solutions of hospital pharmacists for availability problems. And the rapporteur there will be Ms. Aida Batista, experienced hospital pharmacist representing the European Association of Hospital Pharmacists. And session number 4 will be about consumers and patients' perspectives on medicine shortages and about the case of small volumes and limited use medicines. And the rapporteur will be Ms. Monique Goyen, Director General of the European Consumer Organization, representing 45 national consumer associations in 32 European countries. So lots of interesting discussions. Unfortunately, you can't be everywhere at the same time. So you have to choose, and I know that you have made the choice already when registering to the conference. So we will come back together at 11:50. And listen to the rapporteurs giving 5 minutes conclusions. And after that, dear participants, you will have the possibility to ask questions, and please write your questions then into the chat box. With this, I would like to close my introductory words. I wish you a very fruitful discussions today. And now, whatever will be the technical miracle, please feel free to join the parallel breakout sessions of your interests in a lively discussion. And now I am giving the floor to our 4 session rapporteurs, and please be back at 11:50. Thank you.
Dr. Eugis Malone, good morning. I'm talking from the production. Could you please be so kind to turn on your microphone, please?
Okay, is it working now? Okay. Okay, thank you. So sorry. I will restart my presentation since it seems that it was not available. My sound was not available.
Som ok?
Your sound is okay. Now you can start. We can hear you perfectly.
Okay.
Tá ok o som? Ok o som? Dr. Malone, this is the
Yes.
production. So would you be so kind as to pass your presentation again, since the first time we didn't hear you?
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so now you see my screen?
You have to share your screen.
Yes. It's not yet.
You have to click the button, share video. Share
Yes,
screen,
yes.
sorry.
Yes,
Share screen, it's in the bottom, okay?
Yes, I clicked in.
And please on the
When I
left,
see choose what.
and on the left, you have start video. Please click there so we can see you. So you have the microphone button on the left, then you have another button that says start video. You should click there so we can see your face.
Okay.
And then you see another button that says participants, and then another button. Now we see you. And then another button that says
share screen. Yes. But when I click on it, okay, now
you
finally appeared. Yes. Okay.
And then now we see the slides also.
Okay. Now you select full.
Exactly.
Okay, so I can start my presentation.
You can start the presentation. Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
So hello again. Hello, everybody. I'm Hugues Malone from the Federal Agency in Belgium, and I will give you a short overview of what has been done in Belgium regarding the how we try to manage the different shortages. Of course, if we want to find solution to prevent and to mitigate drug shortages, we have to get everyone on the same page, meaning all stakeholders, and they are quite numerous in this area. To this end, the federal agency has brought together a working group on drug shortages as soon as in 2013, assembling all the concerned stakeholders. starting with the Federal Public Services of Economy, who is responsible for fixing price of drugs, the Social Security authorities that are in charge of fixing the reimbursement level of the drugs, as well as the Ministry of Health. This is for the public servant part, but we also have on the table the industry people. We have the pharmacists, both public and hospital pharmacies, as well as the wholesaler and the parallel traders that can play a role in fixing or in sometimes amplifying shortages. We also moved with a new act on medicine shortages in December 2019, where we defined what a shortage is and what is mandatory to notify at the agency level. So technically, we emphasize the mandatory notification of shortages and the mandatory delivery within 3 working days if the order and if the delivery is has to be made for public service obligations. We are currently working on accompanying Royal Decree to make substitution by a pharmacist in case of a shortage is possible, and to restrict export in case of critical shortages, and to compensate as well the extra cost by the pharmaceutical industry. We have developed a decision tree when we have a flow chart that will help us to assess the shortage criticality, and we will take into account to assess the shortage criticality. We will take into account duration, indication if the medicine are critical, and also the alternative and the capacity of the other players in the market to compensate the shortage that has been notified. We will also have the possibility of import by the own company using a derogation pathway, or to make the import possible directly by the pharmacist to fulfill the need of a specific patient. And of course, we put a task force into place as soon as we see that we are facing a critical shortage. We also go for taking measures to mitigate the shortages, and as well as classification based on criticality, meaning low criticality doesn't always need an intervention from the agency, and if we have a clear issue, then we might go for recommendation for distribution of what is left on the market. We put into place an online tool, what is called PharmaStatus, and we now just moved last week for a very new presentation of PharmaStatus, which will be the 2.0 implementation. This is an online application that contributes to an improvement in the communication and compliance with the notification obligation of the different stakeholders. We have, of course, information that are targeting the public, and so the public can get a lot of information of the product that are listed in our shortages. They will also get the possibility to ask for feedback, so they can register, and they will get automatic emails from the PharmaStatus program to inform that their products are back on the market, for instance. We also have exchanges between the marketing authorization holder and the agency. And we emphasize the legal obligation of notifying us. And we also have a possibility of exchange information between the pharmacist, the full line wholesaler, and the marketing authorization holder. I will stop here because the interest of this session is to have a broad discussion, and we already took a lot of time in order to make this presentation. So I invite you to share your experience on drug shortages. May I invite the moderator to activate the microphone of the various people in the room?
Dr. Malone, you have here one
Yes.
question in the chat. I don't know if you can see.
Yes, a lot of them.
One of them is identified with Breakout Session, the room 1.
Okay.
Zachary Desson asks you if you could provide a real-life case of when the critical shortage task force has to be activated and how the process unfolded.
Okay, so I will take one example of a specific. Yes, it was an antibiotic, a first-line antibiotic that was in shortage for more than 2 months, and therefore we had to take immediate action. So within 24 hours of the notification, we have bring together the specific task force, and then we moved for different opportunity, starting with asking the marketing holder to submit a derogation to the agency in order to import packages that are not fully compliant with the Belgian legislation, which means packages that are not having the 3 national languages. So that was an example of what was done and how fast we were able to fix it within 72 hours. We were able to grant a specific authorization to put these specific packages that was not fully compliant with our legislation on the market in order to fulfill the need on the market. This is one example.
Okay, we have a second question.
Yes.
Diogo Piedade asks you, does this decision tree mean that Belgium does not have a critical medicines list, but rather assesses risk on a case-by-case situation?
Yes, that's true. We have a critical medicine list, but sometimes we end up with product that do not appear as being critical list, but for a very specific indication. For instance, in orphan drug situation, for instance, we might not have this drug listed as a critical one, but yet we might face a critical situation with it. So yes, we have a tendency to look first critical medicine list, but also to go a little bit further, and we often go for a case-by-case situation analysis, yes. I see that there is also another question by an automatic system. Not yet, but we are working on it. Today is still done by evaluators in the proper use medicine department.
Om hvor meget medarbejderne bliver inddraget lige nu og her i forhold til det, projektlederne skal sidde og lave. Så har vi jo så hele det her issue omkring forretningsprojektledelse, hvor vi jo ikke, hvor vi lige nu her står lidt på bar bund og skal finde ud af, hvem skal tage den rolle. Så jeg bliver der svar skyldigt. Jeg skal i hvert fald have nogle snakke med Ina først omkring de her ting.
Og vi har også bagved et bagvedliggende leopardprojekt, hvor der også kommer nogle opgaver fra, som jeg sådan set ikke er på toppen af på den måde. Det er ikke mig, jeg har ikke nogen indflydelse på det. Det er review-processer og opdateringer osv., som strømmer ind fra en helt tredje kilde for at øge kompleksiteten endnu en gang.
Ja, men det er jo det regulære vedligehold. Ja, det er leopard, ikke? Så det er jo principielt ikke et projekt længere, kan man sige.
Nej, det er ikke et projekt, men der kommer nogle opgaver fra det, som jeg ikke i hvert fald er på toppen af. Jeg tror, vi har taget tiden, og håber, I fik lidt ud af det, og fik lidt større sådan indblik. Jeg kan sagtens sende jer præsentationen til for Keeps, og så ellers synes jeg egentlig, vi sætter bare et outcome, der hedder, at vi tager nogle flere direkte møder omkring enkeltpersoner, omkring enkeltopgaver. I hvert fald fra vores side, også over for medarbejdere. Er det ikke et konkret? Det er så konkret, det kan blive.
Det synes jeg er fint.
Det er godt. Jamen, så tak for opmærksomheden. Og,
excuse us. Sorry. Excuse us. This is the production. Please speak in English. Otherwise, the participants will not understand. Thank you very much.
Susanna, if you want to make your question, you can do it. Thank you.
Yeah, here is Zuzana Bachova. I am the head of the agency in Slovakia. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, nice. Well, for a few minutes I didn't understand what have you talking about in the Nordic language. Maybe short update from Slovakia. We are quite small country, similar to Netherlands. And we have quite a big problem with shortage of human medicine, and it's a recurring challenge in Slovakia. And the biggest concern is that is not the overall proportion of shortage, but it is an extent. It goes through the all therapeutic groups. It is not located only to one pharmacotherapeutic group. And several years ago, 3 years ago, the agency was responsible to issue a decision on export ban when the shortage was quite huge. But the number of decisions that we issued increases from month to month. So after all, we decided to change the national legislation. It was 2 years ago, and after changing the national legislation, the situation was for 1 year very good. But now it seems that the stakeholders reacted to the change of the national legislation, and and they find again how to export a lot of medicinal products from Slovakia, and the situation is coming back. It's worsening. To be honest, I have to say that the shortage is more or less linked to the price in Slovakia. Yeah, and it's very attractive for wholesalers to export the medicinal product to other countries where the price is higher. So just to sum up in a nutshell, what situation is here in Slovakia. Thank you. Over.
Thank you. What we have seen in Belgium, it's also that the parallel traders are often coming to the politician, explaining that they are a solution, in fact, to shortages. But the reality is probably not that brilliant, because they are almost inevitably they are solving a problem in a place by creating a problem in another one. So there is clearly a need to have a coordination at the European level. And we also need to avoid that it will be perceived as blocking the parallel trade, because it's not, of course, our purposes, but our purposes is try to stabilize the market and avoid that we have movement that in fact are not really helping the patient, but just going into to be detrimental for them in a specific country versus another. Everything being driven, of course, by those sometimes quite small difference in prices. I see another question from Tina Titma to see if we would go in a critical emergency, if we will go for a veterinary medicine. I have one example. It was during of course, the first wave of the COVID crisis in Belgium, when in fact we have authorized for certain type of anesthetic that were clearly in full shortages, and it were not able to find any other solution. We have moved into this direction. Of course, you need to have a very strong and clear communication with the people and with the medical doctor, as well as if it appears in the press for the lay public, because as professional in the pharmaceutical industry and the regulatory agencies, we know that the differences in quality there is no difference in quality in those different between veterinary product and human product. But for the lay public, it is a very, very difficult message to put forward. So we need to be very careful when we go for that. Of course, if there is no option, it is the last option. We can go for it, but we need to be careful in the communication we will make using veterinary medicine in humans, because that's a really tough thing to explain for the lay public.
Okay, we are in the last minutes. We will return to the main room. Thank you, Dr. Malone, for your presentation and to answer all these questions. And in a few seconds, I think we will return to the main room. Thank you.
Regarding your question, Susanna, we are putting into place a royal decree that would allow us to have a specific ban for export, but that's as you may imagine, at the European level, it can have an impact. So we need to be careful on this and to be sure that we take proportionate measure and that we can fully explain why we will issue a ban. So we are working on it.
Thank you.
Quick question for our moderator. Is it the organization that will switch us to the right room, or shall we do it ourselves through the agenda shortcut? Production, you are on mute.
Dear Dr. Yusuf, good morning. This is production speaking. We are now moving you all to the main session for the conclusions. Thank you very much.
For coming back. I know you had very good discussions. I see a lively chat also going on, so I know that you are having now the solutions. Please put them on the table. And we are starting, Hugh, from you, please. You have 5 minutes to say.
So, with some technical issue during my presentation, so we didn't have such a long time to discuss, but yet I had the chance to present the law that we put forward in Belgium in 2019, that we in fact used as well during the COVID crisis, which was helpful in some places. We also showed that the platform we have put into place that connect the agency with the lay public, with the wholesaler and marketing holder authorization, as well as the pharmacist, was quite helpful to exchange the right information. Of course, all the information are not always available for everybody, as you might imagine, so we need to segregate and do our best to be, for the lay public, quite straightforward and understandable. And for others, we can go more into details about what could be done. We explained that we also have a tree to define to give a good definition of what is a critical medicine and a critical issue that we need to tackle. We come into the conclusion, and there was discussion, some question around it in the chat, that price is indeed a problem because it is a powerful driver for parallel trade. I give an explanation that very often the parallel trader in Belgium come to me and to the politicians saying that they are a part of the solution. I would say yes, but the but being that you might solve a problem somewhere by creating another problem somewhere else. So we need to be very careful on this side, not by blocking parallel trade, because I think it is useful to keep the price at a certain lower level, I would say. But on the other hand, we need to be careful that it's not an incentive to provoke a disruption in the market. And in specific case, we saw that, and our colleague from Slovakia explained that they did change the law in order to block this incentive for traders, but quite rapidly they find a way around, and now they are facing the same problem they had before the law. So that's a tricky problem. That's something we need to address all together in a coordinated way, not being seen as trying to interfere with the free movement of goods, of course, but on the other hand, trying to protect all European lay public and citizen and to help them to get access to important medicines. So that would be my conclusion.
Thank you. Thank you for this. We will listen all the conclusions, and then we can have a discussion and some more questions. So thank you, and we are going to session number 2. Josipa, please.
Yes, thank you. Well, the topic of the session 2 was shortages management plans to avoid availability problems, where we discussed the importance of initiatives focused on stability of pharmaceutical supply chain. As the reasons for shortages are complex, there is no quick solution available by implementing a single measure. So we agreed that some of them should be early communication on possible supply disruptions of all stakeholders within the supply chain, then management of shortages with patient in focus, like exchange in clinical practice to prioritize use of the product for specific patient group, then regulatory initiatives to the most vulnerable medicinal products to shortages such as old but still clinically imported medicines would also be useful to keep these products on the market. And focus should be moved from safety and efficacy to their quality, since quality issues are most often the cause of their shortages. And since forecasting of national medicines demand is gaining in importance as an idea that could be of help in timely prevention of shortages, we also discussed the development of EU platform for monitoring the medicine stock levels. But this is a very sensitive area, and it will be better to focus on manufacturers' responsibility to ensure adequate stock levels, for example, to investigate possibility to have industry to have buffer stocks as a part of the procurement procedure. And that will be the conclusion from our session. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And now, Aida, please, session number 3.
Thank you. My session was about the hospital pharmacy solutions for availability problems. We talked about the way hospital pharmacists deal with shortages, what kind of actions they have to take, and we think that hospital pharmacies have a direct stake in the efficient functioning of the medicine supply chain and the operation of medicines reimbursement system that enable patients on hospital to benefit for sustainable and equitable access to medicines they require. Nevertheless, there are some barriers to treatment assessment. And one of the barriers are the procurement practices and policies that link to pricing and reimbursement can tackle medicine shortages, and we have to break down these barriers. And also the national policy choices linked to procurement, to value assessment and price mechanisms should safeguard the access of patients. One of the questions that we had was why, if the EMA or the national agency approves a medicine, why another health assessment technology has to be provided to allow, for instance, as in Portugal, to hospitals buy the medicines for a patient. That was one of the questions. And one of the questions is the affordability and the sustainability of the system. And we have to be sure that innovation is used on those patients that really need and can benefit for that medicine. So we already also talked about EMA actions, the practice guidance, good practice to solve shortages and mitigate impact. It is briefly, as long as COVID situation allow us to be published, and the hospital pharmacists are involved, and the input of hospital pharmacists is very important on this issue. Also, hospital pharmacists are involved on the structured dialogue for shortages for the EU in two groups, the critical medicines and also the vulnerabilities of the supply chain. So the hospital pharmacists are should be always part of the solution of accessibilities and shortages. This is one of the conclusions that you will see briefly in a position paper from the European Association of Hospital Pharmacists that will be launched after our General Assembly. Maybe in end of June, August, we'll have a position paper on availability of medicines from Hospital Pharmacy Association. Thank you.
Thank you for this explanation. And now word and floor to Monique, please, the consumers and patients perspective.
Yes, good afternoon. Thank you very much for giving the opportunity to include into this event also the perspective of consumers and patients when it comes to impact of drug shortages. What is the type of impact? Well, we have discussed this also very shortly in the session. It is, of course, stress and anxiety. It can be that they become more unhealthy, sicker, and sometimes even that can lead to hospitalization. And also sometimes the effect of there can be side effects of the alternative treatment or even also higher costs, just to mention a few. We have also shortly mentioned the reasons for these shortages. And what we would like to highlight is the fact that sometimes it can be linked to the commercial strategy of a company, like just withdrawing a drug from the market, creating an artificial shortage, then reintroducing it at a much higher price. This is not good for the consumer finance and not good for the public health finance neither. Quite some solutions have been identified and suggested. I will try to mention most of them. We have mentioned also parallel import as one of the solutions, but I would like, as personally, to agree with the first rapporteur saying that might be just shifting the problem somewhere else, and that the solution in that context is really more coordination at European level, so that situations of local shortages can be outweighed or neutralized by a more European-wide coordination. There has been also mention of the fact that companies need to with rigor notify to regulators when there is a situation of drug shortages, and there should be public reporting on those shortages via a database that is accessible to all stakeholders. We also believe that authorities need to be very proactive when it comes to communicating about drug shortages, because sometimes patients, or most of the time, patients are not aware of the fact that there is a shortage that might affect a treatment that they need to undergo. However, it has been quite made clear also in the chat that there is a need not to over-communicate, in the sense that you should not create a situation of fear, of panic, and a run on those drugs that are still available at a temporary level. So it needs to be smart communication, so that consumers do not overreact when it comes to the shortage. So it's important to give also the right proportion of the figures that are in terms of shortages. Another proposal that was made is to set up high-level collaborative forum that are multi-stakeholders, meaning, of course, the regulators, of course, the different regulators that are involved in drug, putting drugs on the market and paying for them, but also, of course, the companies, but also patient and consumer representatives, so that they can be involved at an early stage in order to do their job in communicating towards the people, the public opinion about what's happening with some drugs. And also they can feed back to the forum and to the other stakeholders the situations that are being experienced by the people on the ground. There should be also stronger obligations on companies in terms of the obligation to present to the marketing authorization process also a drug shortage prevention and management plan. So this is something that we believe is a very important step that would need to be quite quickly. We also believe that once a company has a market authorization, there should be an obligation for it to market, not just to keep it somewhere in the drawers. Although we know that there are, of course, after the marketing authorization, very important decisions to be taken on the pricing and on the reimbursement that will also have, of course, an effect on the availability or the accessibility of medicine. As a conclusion, what I would like to stress is the good news is there are plenty of solutions that are possible to address either prevent or manage drug shortages, and that the upcoming the pharma strategy and the upcoming legislation that will be reviewed or will be reinforced are, and in particular also the regulation that is about the reinforcement of the mandate of the European Medicines Agency are a perfect momentum to really try to improve prevention and management of drug shortages in Europe, and we should take that opportunity to make that that problem, to keep that problem under control. Thank you.
Thank you very much for these words. These sound like music to my ears, that there are plenty of solutions. So I'm sure that Portuguese presidency have written them all down and can present them and make them to life, like council conclusions and whatever actions could you take. Thank you all for these conclusions. Now we have time to answer again some questions. So anybody from the audience, if you would like to ask something, please write in the chat box. But to open this discussion, I would like to say that I'm somehow the feeling that agencies, pharmacists, even patients know so many things what they can do and what they have done already to prevent, to mitigate the shortages. Again and again we hear that the regulators should be more flexible, but we can't forget that how flexible can the regulators be not to harm the evaluation of quality, efficacy and safety. Actually, the power of having the medicinal products on the market in the first place is in the hands of the industry. So if there is anybody in the audience from industry, even if you can't ask it orally, you can write something into the chat box. I would be very much interested in the opinion of the industry about these proposals, that stronger obligations for the industry and risk management plans, inspections. So if anybody from the industry can step in, it would be also nice. But as I don't see at the moment I can see a comment about growing regulatory requirements and price-strict policies. It might be true, but as a regulator, I can tell that we are working hard to harmonize the regulatory requirements between the countries. And I like very much the idea of discussion further. Do we have the paper information leaflet in the package, or we can, in taking into account all the technical possibilities we are having, maybe we can make the life easier and use a blank medicinal product to guarantee that we could quickly move one medicine to another country, and we will find the information in national language in some other way other than the national language paper in the box. I have the question to Hugh and
Yes.
as the people from the agency. What do you think about the inspection of the shortages? Actually, it is something we don't do very often, and I think it is not something what is in the EU legislation either. So, but those who work every day with shortages, they say that they see hundreds of colors of the reason of shortage, industry saying commercial reason or whatever. So what do you think about the inspection of shortages?
That's a tough question. It depends where you want to go with your inspection. You can go in a factory or rather go for wholesalers or distributors. I think the supply chain is quite large. And if we only go to the industry, even with an inspection, I would say, for instance, at the Belgian headquarters of a company, I'm not sure I will get information what people want to see, in fact. I've worked for the industry when I was younger, and pricing discussion, they are quite difficult in the industry. We were a very few number of, we were like a handful number of person that were really aware of what were the price throughout the countries. So I think it's not pricing. It's a very tough parameters to control, because as you probably know as well, transfer pricing can be applied. And so if you go to a factory and you ask, what is the cost of your product? It's impossible to really understand what is the relationship between the true value of the product you have in front of you and the price that is used throughout the supply chain. So I can understand the reflection and the thought that you need to go for inspection and try to understand, but that's not an inspector that can help understand the construction of a price. I don't know if I'm clear here, Christine.
Thank you. It is exactly what I was thinking, that it is not an easy task. Josipa, would you like to add something about the idea of inspecting the shortages?
I just want to add that as a national spokesperson, I just want to inform you that within our spoke network, there is an extensive discussion on this topic, and to set better coordination between inspectors and spoke network, because it's easy when you have a quality defect in a factory at your home. But what if manufacturer is in another member state, or how to coordinate and exchange information, because manufacturing issues are the most often the cause of shortages. For example, the old equipment, and so I just want to inform you that this topic is under discussion extensively within the SPOC.
Yeah, so I wish you all the strength, because really I think that it is something we should understand together with the industry. What is the actual reason? Maybe the study from the European Commission will help us understanding the root causes, but it doesn't matter how flexible are patients, how flexible are regulators, the medicines are coming from industry. So thank you. I can see in the chat box, Portuguese colleagues have said they have done inspections. Yeah, should be applied in the European legislation, which I think is true, because as you know, at the moment all the regulators and all the stakeholders are working hard with shortages, but it is not in the European legislation in such a way at all. So I really hope that it will be the future, and I know the legislation is open at the moment, so I hope something will come there. So not a concrete question, but maybe I would like to ask from Aida, from you, what do you think, who has the most of the power in this chain of stakeholders to solve the situation what we are facing every day? Who has the most of the power to do something?
Well, if you want a simple question, well, we all have to solve our problems, but of course, the strongest on the supply chain is the manufacturers and the industry, but we have to also help them with some or give them some tools and some information from our side to them to solve some of the issues that sometimes they are not fully understood from our side as healthcare professionals. Because what I want is to have a medicine for my patient. I don't care how I get it, but I want the medicine, the right medicine from the patient. If a provider says to me, I don't have that medicine, I say, it's your fault because you don't produce enough medicines for me to have and sometimes it's not the truth. So we have to keep going on this structured dialogue full of transparency and with multi-stakeholders and make everyone understand that we are producing something that is not valuable. It's health. Health can't have a value. Health is the basic value that you need for all the citizens of the world, not only from Europe, but all of the citizens. And we have to together to build some kind of a chain that every small piece goes smoothly to the other, and it is very transparent in the supply chain to get the best treatment in an affordable way, because we don't have money at this moment. Europe and all the countries, even not only a poor country like Portugal, but all the countries have problems with money, with currency, and we should the availability of medicines should be affordable. Even if we hospital pharmacies start to manipulate, to compound medicines to solve the shortages.
Thank you, Aida. Monique, yes, I'm giving the floor to you, please.
Thank you. I would like to react to something because there has been a lot of talk about the price of medicines. And from the consumer perspective, you need to be aware that the pricing of medicines is a black box. How much is being invested in R&D? How much is just promotional and marketing expenses? And what we see here also is that sometimes people, like you and me, we end up paying twice. First as taxpayers, because there is a lot of public funding going into research and development, and certainly now, I mean, and for good reasons. But what is the return if I, as taxpayer, contribute to the development of a drug, and for example, of a new drug, and we all want to help developing new drugs for important diseases or vaccines. But then I have also to pay, and then there is also high prices in some instances or non-reimbursement of some drugs. So I would really say that the consumer part or the patient part of drug shortages has to be handled in parallel and in combination with the availability part, and that the pricing, I mean, helping to be more transparent on how pricing structures are being set would also sometimes help people understand how the market functions. But what we would really like to prevent, and where we would really like to see more transparency, is this, first of all, transparency. How is it funded? And if there is public funding, how is this being echoed in the pricing and reimbursement discipline? This is just something, a fair market is where you don't pay twice for the same product. Thank you.
Thank you for this. Of course, this is absolutely clear that the transparency about the prices and transparency in the whole supply chain, it is very important. Yeah, so I see that we are already running into the lunch, and probably the wine is warm and the food is cold already, but maybe just to close up from our wonderful panelists, is there anything you could say how to make the better cooperation we are doing at the moment? Because we saw last year when the pandemic started, all the nice words about cooperation between the member states, they somehow crashed. And now we are building it up again piece by piece. So do you want to say something how we could do better cooperation to solve the issue of shortages between all of our stakeholders, regulators? Josipa, would you like to just final words?
I again can speak from the perspective of spokesperson, because through Spoke Network we exchange information on possible shortages of critical medicines where there are no alternatives, and then we share information on available solutions, available alternatives between member states. And I have to admit that I'm happy with this cooperation. It's very successful. So I have a good experience.
Thank you. It sounds well. The Spock system, which is quite new, is working well, and you are happy. So thank you for this information. Hugh, would you like to say how to make better cooperation working to solve shortages?
Okay, sorry, because I was muted by by the organization. Could you please repeat your question, Christine?
So just that the word cooperation wouldn't be just a nice word. Everybody says it, that we need better cooperation. But can you say something we could do already tomorrow to just find again the point of the cooperation, what could help us to avoid and mitigate the shortages?
I think cooperation, it starts with transparent communication at every single level, including your own stakeholder in your country and your colleague in the various competent authority, as well as the EMA and the European Commission. To me, it's a very important point. To give you an example, very straightforward, we got a call from a wholesaler complying because a company refused to deliver medicine, and they claimed it was for the public services. So of course we went to this marketing authorization holder, and we learned that within 2 months, this wholesaler has ordered more than twice what was forecasted for the Belgian market. And we were, of course, in front of a big shortage. And the shortage was, of course, in other countries in Europe, probably including Estonia, I would say. So you see here, some people are hiding information in the supply chain, and this shouldn't be allowed, because then you take the wrong action against the wrong people. So to me, what we need really to leverage today is to have a transparent communication from all stakeholders and also between the different agencies.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Aida, would you like to say something for better cooperation?
Well, you know, I'm dealing with this issue of shortages for more than 10 years. So I keep going, and I will not give up until until I'm retired or something happens good. So I think we must listen to each other and listen carefully, and not with prejudices and not with some kind of untrust. We must trust our stakeholders, and if they trust us and we trust them, we'll find a solution for sure. Of course, with transparency, as said before.
Thank you. And Monique, your last words.
I'm aware that I'm the last person who withholds you from your glass of wine, so let me be very quick. I would like to say, I think that national solutions are not 21st century proof. We are living in a global world. We are living in the European Union, and we will, from our perspective, cooperation, exchange of information, coordination, and solidarity are the way forward. And when it comes to drug shortages, a system that can be built up very quickly, not maybe tomorrow, but maybe within a year, is to have a common database that is shared by member states authorities on drug shortages, so that there is a possibility really to flag very quickly where are the hot spots, and that can then also help managing together the sectors where there is the more, let's say, structural problem. Thank you. And bon appétit, as we say in my country.
Thank you very much. I can see also some comments in the chat box that the high-level forum will be key, and comments from industry. Beata saying, explaining again what is the point of the industry in that question. And that we should work together, it is for sure. And as our panelists said, the transparent communication from all stakeholders, not only regulators, is extremely important. But with that, I would like to thank you for a very interesting session. Thank you all the panelists and session chairs, and I would like to thank all the participants. I wish you all the best and hope that the ideas from today will come into the life and change the scene of our everyday life. So I will be working hard in the area of shortages, so probably we will meet again before we can solve it finally. So goodbye and have a nice lunch, and I think the conference will go on about in an hour, so you can see it in the agenda, so please take care. Thank you and goodbye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.